You signed the paperwork on a Tuesday. You were 18 years old. You did not read the amortization schedule. Nobody told you there was one. That moment, pen on paper, a university place secured, a future apparently purchased, was the entry point into one of the most quietly sophisticated debt systems ever constructed by a Western government. Not a predatory payday lender. Not a subprime mortgage broker operating out of a strip mall in 2006. Your government. Your treasury. The institution whose logo appeared on the top of the loan agreement in official, reassuring typography. The student loan was sold to you as an investment in yourself. What it actually is, structurally, actuarially, by deliberate legislative design, is something far more calculated. It is a debt instrument that, for the majority of borrowers in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia, was never mathematically intended to be fully repaid. That is not a conspiracy. It is arithmetic. Start with the United Kingdom, because the UK system is the most architecturally transparent about what it is actually doing. Under the current Plan 2 and Plan 5 repayment frameworks, graduates repay 9% of everything they earn above a specific income threshold. Right now, that threshold sits at £27,295 annually for Plan 2 borrowers. Below that number, you pay nothing. Above it, 9% of the excess flows directly to the student loans company every single month. Here is what the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the UK's most respected independent economic research body, calculated in 2022. Under the post-2012 fee and interest regime, approximately 55% of English graduates would never fully repay their student loan before the 30-year write-off point. Not because they failed, not because they chose low-income careers, because the system's own internal interest rate, which was pegged to the retail price index plus up to 3% during repayment, was structurally set above the realistic wage growth trajectory of a median graduate earner. Read that again. The interest accumulation rate was deliberately calibrated above what the median borrower could realistically outpace. The loan was not designed to shrink for most people who held it. It was designed to persist. What does that mean in practice? It means that for over half of UK graduates, every monthly repayment they make for 30 years reduces their take-home pay without reducing their loan balance in any meaningful, permanent way. The interest accrual partially or entirely offsets the repayment. The outstanding balance stays elevated, sometimes grows, and then, after 3 decades, is canceled by the Treasury. The borrower has paid in, consistently, for 30 years. The balance was never conquered. It was merely extinguished on a government schedule. This is not a side effect. It is the system operating exactly as its actuaries designed it. The UK's own Office for Budget Responsibility Modelling has consistently shown that the government expects to write off a substantial portion of the total student loan book. The write-off is baked into the fiscal projection. It is a budget line. Your 30 years of 9% deductions are the revenue stream the Treasury collects before that write-off date arrives. Now move to Australia, where the system is called HECS help, and where the political narrative is even more aggressively optimistic. Australian graduates repay through the tax system. Repayment rates begin at 1% of income and rise progressively to 10% at higher income bands, triggered only above an annual income floor. Currently, just over 51,000 Australian dollars. The loan itself is indexed annually to CPI. Officially, that sounds benign. Inflation-linked, not interest-bearing. A system designed with the borrower's protection in mind. Except the 2022 and 2023 CPI spike, which peaked at over 7% in Australia, added thousands of dollars to HECS help balances overnight for millions of graduates who had been making consistent repayments for years. In a single indexation event on the 1st of June 2023, the Australian government added an average of 1,700 Australian dollars to every active HECS help debt. Graduates who had been diligently repaying watched their balance increase despite their compliance. The Australian Taxation Office confirmed this. It was not an error. It was the system functioning within its own rules during an inflationary environment. Those rules were never designed to survive at scale. According to the Australian Department of Education's own data, the total HECS help loan book outstanding as of 2023 exceeded 86 billion Australian dollars. With a significant and growing proportion held by borrowers whose income has never crossed the repayment threshold. These are not dropouts. Many are graduates working in education, healthcare, social work, fields the government actively recruited them into, whose incomes structurally sit near or below the trigger point for meaningful repayment. They hold the debt. They do not service it at a rate that dents the principal. It compounds. It waits. In the United States, the mechanics are different, but the destination is structurally identical. The federal student loan system, administered through servicers like Navient, now rebranded as Advantage, Mohila, and Nelnet, has produced an outstanding loan book that crossed $1.77 trillion as of 2024, according to Federal Reserve data. That number has not contracted meaningfully in over a decade. It has grown continuously through Democratic and Republican administrations alike, through economic expansions and contractions, through pandemic freezes and repayment resumptions. The economist Stephanie Kelton, who served as chief economist on the U.S. Senate Budget Committee, noted that income-driven repayment plans in the American system, IBR, PAYE, SAVE, are not repayment accelerants. They are, by design, payment management tools. They cap monthly obligations at a percentage of discretionary income and promise forgiveness after 20 or 25 years of qualifying payments. For a borrower on an income-driven plan whose adjusted payment does not cover their monthly interest accrual, the loan balance grows every single month they make a payment. This is called negative amortization. It is a feature, not a bug, of plans designed to keep borrowers in compliance rather than in payoff mode. The loan servicer industry is the mechanism that makes this architecture function. Federal servicers are paid per account, per month, to manage borrower relationships. Their revenue model is predicated on loan longevity. A loan repaid in 7 years generates far less servicer revenue than a loan managed across 25 years of income-driven repayment. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau documented this conflict of interest explicitly in multiple enforcement actions against Navient between 2017 and 2022, citing evidence that servicers steered borrowers into forbearance, which pauses payments but allows interest to accrue, rather than income-driven repayment plans that might accelerate payoff. The servicer's financial incentive and the borrower's financial interest pointed in opposite directions. The servicer won, routinely, because the borrower did not know the rules of the game they were playing. Here is what connects these three systems. The UK's income contingent write-off engine, Australia's CPI-indexed accumulation machine, and America's servicer-mediated negative amortization architecture. They are all built on the same foundational premise, that student debt is a managed revenue stream, not a consumer debt product designed for full liquidation. The Treasury, in each case, has modeled the expected write-off. The fiscal projection accounts for it. The political language frames it as generosity, a safety net, a system that protects low earners. The actuarial reality is that it is a 30-year income deduction schedule with a government-controlled termination date. What happens to your decision-making when you carry this debt? Research published in the Journal of Financial Economics by economists Alvaro Metza, Daniel Ringo, and Camilla Sommer at the Federal Reserve found that a $10,000 increase in student loan debt reduces the probability of homeownership by 1 to 2 percentage points in the years following graduation. You are not simply carrying a balance sheet liability. You are carrying a structurally suppressed borrowing capacity that changes what you can do with your income, your credit profile, and your asset accumulation trajectory for the decade when compounding returns would be most powerful in your favor. The graduate who begins investing at 22 versus 28 does not simply have 6 more years of returns. Because of compounding, those 6 years can represent 30 to 40% of their total retirement portfolio. Every year of delayed investing, caused by a debt obligation that, actuarially, was never going to be fully extinguished anyway, is a compounding return that vanishes permanently from your financial timeline. And the system was designed this way, not maliciously, not by a single villain in a boardroom, by actuaries and Treasury officials and legislative committees who calculated the write-off rate, set the interest parameters, appointed the servicers, and structured the repayment triggers in a way that maximized compliant, long-duration debt management across an entire graduate population. The outcome for the majority of borrowers was a known variable in the model. It was not a failure of the system. It was the system. So go back to that Tuesday. 18 years old. Pen on paper. You were not buying an education with a loan you would later repay. You were entering a structured, government-administered income deduction agreement with a 30-year horizon and a write-off clause that your Treasury had already priced into next decade's budget forecast. The paperwork was always longer than they told you. The arithmetic was always working against the median outcome. And the institution whose logo appeared at the top of that agreement knew exactly what the numbers would look like 30 years later. The only person in that transaction who did not know was you.